Welcome into the channel, everyone. This is Michael Tharp, EDU. It starts with you. What I want to do today is read to you guys a letter that I read before my local school board, and I would highly advise everyone to do this, just to let them know that you are concerned about what is happening in education today in America. But before I do that, I want to show you guys something. I was examining some of the social emotional learning websites, and I found this implicit bias test, and I answered a bunch of questions, and then I got to a point where the only choice was you could say bad for black people and good for white people. So they set it up to where first you just say whether people are white or black, and they show you that little picture you see there. And then they had all these things like you were supposed to say whether they were good or bad, like working hard or like lying. And then they get to where you're just supposed to say black people are bad and white people are good, I guess. I'm gonna guess you're gonna be a racist is what's gonna happen in the end. I don't know if this will work because it happened a long time ago. So I put that the this person was good or a white person, and it gave me an X. So let's just see what happens if I press a key to continue. I might be like logged out or something. Yeah, it's not working. But basically, I just thought it was funny that this bias test basically is gonna everyone's gonna be a racist, I guess. I didn't end up finishing it because when I got here, I was like laughing and so confused. I didn't know what to do. Um, so I'm gonna read to you guys what I said and give a little more commentary. I only had 5 minutes in the school board, so I was really rushing. So if I had to redo things again, I would not have put as much information in there. But that tends to be one of my weak points. So just so you guys understand, this most of the stuff I'm gonna be reading from is from Castle, which is the main platform that is pushing SEL. Um, and you just scroll down here and right here, transformative SEL toward SEL and service, educational equity and excellence. So you can see all of that right here. So I just went through this and picked out the most obvious political Marxist stuff. That's in um, social emotional learning. And I just wanted the board to be made aware of that this is in what we are going to use to try to teach children. And I think it's very dangerous and divisive. And I'm going to keep bringing you guys facts and evidence of this. So let's start here. I will zoom in a little bit, and I'll put a copy of this in down below. If you guys want to take part of it and use it for some of your school boards, you're more than welcome to. Thomas Paine once said, "The greatest of tyrannies are always perpetuated in the name of the noblest causes." I come before you today to raise awareness and ask for you to be open-minded as we consider a serious topic for our culture, education, and the Greenville community as a whole. It goes by many names on purpose to intentionally confuse and avoid criticism, but it is commonly called critical theory, critical race theory, neo-Marxism, CRT, social justice, wokeness, anti-racism, cancel culture, SEL, DEI, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion, or intersectionality, among many others. As Alexander Solzhenitsyn once said, all communist parties, upon attaining power, have become completely merciless. But at the stage before they achieve power, it is necessary to use disguises. On the surface, critical theory looks to be all about accepting others as they are and seeking to end discrimination. I am sure that educators looking to implement SEL into our curriculum are well-meaning and believe it will benefit children based on the surface-level explanation that SEL advances. One of the common Marxist tactics is to change the definition of words from their traditional meaning. You must understand that Marxists share your vocabulary, but not your dictionary. Let's start out with a definition of critical theory from Richard Delgado in his book Critical Race Theory and Introduction from 2001. You guys have seen my previous videos. I did a video just on this definition of critical theory. Unlike traditional civil rights, which embraces incrementalism and step-by-step progress, critical race theory questions the very foundations of the liberal order, including equality theory, legal reasoning, Enlightenment rationalism, and neutral principles of constitutional law. Although CRT began as a movement in the law, it has rapidly spread beyond that discipline. Today, many in the field of education consider themselves critical race theorists who use CRT's ideas to understand issues of school discipline and hierarchy, tracking, controversies over curriculum and history, and IQ and achievement testing. Unlike some academic disciplines, critical race theory contains an activist dimension. Now, I should have put quotes around that. I wasn't writing this. This is just my own personal speech. I wasn't writing. But that's literally from the book. So, again, we're gaslit and told that critical race theory doesn't exist. It's not in schools, it's not in education. And I just like to use a book from 2001 that clearly states that it is already in education. So imagine how far it's advanced in the last 20 years. So, to summarize what we have learned about CRT from one of its leading authors, CRT looks to tear down liberalism, which, again, I'm telling you guys, if you are on the right, stop calling people on the left liberal or libs. You are losing the language battle if you are doing that. Either call them communist or Marxist, or at the very least, progressives. The founding fathers were liberals, okay? Liberal does not mean what it meant even when I was a teenager, so we got to stop using it. Which Western civilization is built upon? Equality, the Constitution, and rationalism, which is literally like facts, logic, and reason. They literally believe using those things is racist and white supremacy and whatever terms they come up with. And it has an activist dimension, which I think is so huge. And most school boards, I don't know if they don't know this or they won't recognize it. It is, and we're going to show how this is literally in SEL, is they want to create social justice change agents. So it's not that this isn't just teaching kids to be nice. This isn't just teaching about past discrimination or past racism in the US history. It is doing it now and trying to teach kids to think this way and view everything through this racial Marxist lens. Critical theory does not seek to end segregation, racism, and discrimination, but yet recreate it in today's society to make up for past historical discrimination. Which, again, I don't know if school boards don't know this or they're just refusing to see it, but they have to understand when they implement SEL, they are promoting discrimination and racism. I don't care what words they use or how they twist the words. We're going to stick with facts, logic, and reason and stand firm. So how do we know this? To quote one of the leading proponents of CRT today, Ibram X. Kendi, the only remedy to past discrimination is present discrimination. The only remedy to present discrimination is future discrimination. So you have to understand critical theorists believe racism can never end. It's always going to be here, and we must constantly always battle it every day. So this is why they view everything through a racial lens. There's nothing that you can do that is not racist. So you have to constantly check yourself or check your privilege or do the work as they say. And the only way to be correct and not be a racist is to do what they say and believe what they think. I believe critical theory, discrimination by race, and making racism the central lens of all thinking and education is evil and should be kept out of any teaching philosophy or praxis at GPS. Some may say that SEL does not teach or indoctrinate students with critical theory Marxism. Let's examine the Castle website on SEL. In 2019, the concept of transformative SEL was developed. Another thing you have to understand is transformative means revolutionary. So it is, and Marx used that word a lot, transformative. So they're basically admitting here we are out to change everything. In 2020, Castle added information about transformative SEL to its website, proclaiming it as their updated definition of SEL. So what is transformative SEL and what does it teach? To understand this, we're going to look at a journal linked on the Castle website from educational psychologist, published in June of 2019, entitled, I showed you guys this before. I'm sorry, it is right here. So we're going to, all these quotes are right from here, and this is the seminal journal about what transformative SEL is. Mira and Morel, 2011, drew a useful distinction between neoliberal and critical democracy and offered implications for education. Briefly, they argued that education aimed at promoting personally responsible citizenship and its attendant individualism and consumerism with a dominant neoliberal democracy. This is the dominant model. So they're saying here Western civilization, liberalism, neoliberalism, right? Being a personal, responsible citizen is the old way of doing things. That's the old thinking. If you're familiar with the Maoist education revolution in China, this is exactly what they taught. Anything old was bad. What do they want now? A critical democracy, which just sub in the word communism, Marxism, whatever, requires education to have collectivism. So this is the battle. Individualism that America was founded on, or the collectivism of Marxism and communism. Productive interactionism and authentic engagement as its goals. You know, they kind of throw that in there because that's kind of like popular education language. Accordingly, the field of SEL could aim to prepare students for not only engaged, but also critical citizenship. So we see here that SEL is pushing the collectivism of critical neo-Marxism over the individual of neoliberalism. Now, I'm not saying somebody can't be a Marxist or a communist and promote this worldview or political ideology. My point is, we should not have an entire curriculum that is navigating, guiding, some would say indoctrinating students who view the world in this way. You know, that's not as what's supposed to be happening at school, even if it is a public school. In contrast, here's another quote. In contrast, transformative SEL is consistent with transformational resistance, as it features a system of critique and is motivated by distributive social justice. Now, obviously, distributive literally means taking from one person and giving to the other, like traditional Marxism. And I understand that if people don't pay much attention and they just kind of watch CNN and don't really follow politics, they probably think social justice is like just a good thing everybody wants. I don't have time to go into what it actually means, but you have to understand it's just Marxism. This really isn't that complicated. They just use a lot of fancy words to confuse people and throw in a bunch of stuff that looks good. But once we break that, we'll break down social justice sometime. But and I said which is just Marxism pushed by critical theory. Another quote: "We agree that an integrated identity is a desirable developmental outcome among young people. Understanding the nature of healthy integration requires an intersectional approach. Intersectionality evolved out of Black feminism." And if you guys remember in our past videos, we talked about how that was kind of the turning point where the Marxists said, we need to use the ghetto populations, that's their term, not mine. We need to use the ghetto populations to kind of infiltrate America because their economy is so good. We can't just use, the poor and middle class to advance this communist Marxist revolution. Who is really angry and who can we use to destroy this society? And their answer was Black feminists. And so Angela Davis is a famous Marxist that kind of was the leader of, or one of the leading proponents of that during the 60s and 70s. So again, intersectionality is one of the core teachings of CRT. And this is where you get that victimhood of who's an oppressor and who's the oppressed. And you have to kind of like line up all these things of like, I'm a white cis male, so I'm the evilest of the evil. And that's what they're going to teach the students. And I guess you could kind of say I'm Christian, so that makes me even worse. So I'm the worst thing ever. But if you're a Hispanic, by I don't even know. I can't even think of these things right now, but you get the point. Culturally responsive teaching also challenges racial and cultural stereotypes. Actual quote from SEL's main text: "It encourages being change agents for social justice." In other words, revolutionary Marxist. I mean, I can't believe they were that bold to use this language in an educational journal. But right there, clear as day, they're saying our goal is to teach students to be change agents for social justice. This is only a small sample of the evidence that clearly shows that SEL is indoctrinating and pushing critical theory Marxism and its revolutionary worldview on our children. I ask this board to do further research on this topic and reject any sort of curriculum that is pushing this divisive Marxist and racist ideology. So that is what I said to the board. I do plan on going back at the next meeting and having it be more of a question that I want to ask them and have them consider. And I'll just say this in closing because I've had some very productive comments on my past videos. You will often hear that critical theory is just we need to talk about other people's opinions and viewpoints, and we need to focus on past historical discrimination. Let me be clear. I think that's very important. As I was growing up, as I was teaching and I was getting, involved in politics, my main drive and push was to help the Black community, without a doubt. I was a history teacher. I understand the plight of their people and what has happened to them in the past and how many times they were wronged. And one of my main goals was to help them. I was talking about, police reform in 2006 when it wasn't the cool thing to do. I was talking about no-knock raids. I was talking about the drug war and especially in education. I mean, we can talk about how, Black people get the short end of the stick in public education all day long. One of the best books I ever read was How to Keep Black Boys Out of Special Education by Juwanja Kunjufu. Awesome book, highly recommend. And I would focus on those things extensively in history. Trust me, I'm more of a libertarian. Like, I have no problem talking about the past mistakes and evil the US government has done. But are we going to view that through a liberal lens that looks at facts, evidence, logic, and reason? Or are we going to look at through a critical theory lens? Those are very different. You can look at past discrimination and view it through two different lenses. It's the lens that which you view something and teach children to view something that paints their entire worldview. So that is very important to understand. It's not that I don't think we should not discuss these things and brush them aside. It's not that we can't ever talk about race, but it should not be the entire thing that our whole world revolves around, and everything we see everywhere we want to bring it back to race or something that separates or divides us. That is only going to cause more animosity and division. So if you guys enjoyed this video, I would appreciate like, comment, subscribe, share this out with anyone that you know, anyone going through this in their local area with social emotional learning. I know people feel very downtrodden, like there's no place to go. So I hope these videos help inspire you guys to stand strong on the American ideals of individualism, liberty, and equality is what we need to be teaching and promoting and valuing in our public education system. All right, we'll see you guys in the next video. Everyone have a great week.